I'm Jason Blair, and this is a Silver Linings Handbook podcast bonus episode. It's from a discussion that Julia Cowley, a retired FBI profiler and the host of the Consult podcast, and I had on the murders of Madison Mogen, Ethan Chapin, Zana Kronoodle, and Kaylee Goncalves. They were murdered in what's known as the 2022 University of Idaho murders that Bryan Kohberger pled guilty to this year. In our conversation, we discussed the real-life nightmare of Bryan Kohberger, but we also began talking about the ways that some of the survivors were treated, which led to an important conversation about the value of kindness in true crime and in life. When Julia mentions she's sorry about my friend, she's referring to Jessica Olive Cash, a friend and researcher for this podcast who died in September. I hope you all enjoy and get a lot from this bonus conversation.
At all. You can speculate all you want. Some of the accusations are so dangerous. They're so irresponsible. It is, I don't understand how anyone can, sitting, at their home, never having worked a crime scene, never having investigated these types of cases, and all you're doing is reading media reports and rumors and, oh, somebody said this, and then announcing a
Your
suspect.
theory, yeah.
It is the most irresponsible thing, and just imagine that happening to you and having your life completely upended, and you have absolutely nothing to do with this crime. It's so dangerous to do. It's irresponsible, and they have no basis whatsoever. I don't even have a basis.
Right. Yes, right.
I know I don't know.
Right.
And
which may be the real difference. You don't know.
We don't know. I know how the investigation is likely going to unfold. I know what BAU would do and likely what they would be asking for. I know all those things. I can talk generally, but to say I know what happened in that house, that was like when you and I first started, and I was getting so many messages. What do you think happened? I'm like, I don't know. And, my husband always jokes, and we'll be watching a true crime show, and he'll be like, what do you think? And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, what good are you?
I have my own profiler, and what good are you?
He always says that, like, oh, I read about this case, and he's not like really into true crime, but because of my interests, he'll hear about a case, or he'll have like one of his friends or one of his coworkers like ask me about something, and I'll be like, I don't know. And people are like, what? And sometimes Bruce will be like, you got to come up with something. Like,
right.
Well, statistics show, but to go back and to be serious, I don't really get angry very much, but when I see innocent people blamed like that by people who have absolutely no idea what they're doing, and they didn't walk the crime scene, they didn't go in, they don't know who the victim, they don't know anything about the victimology, and they're just throwing out random names of people and making accusations they know nothing about. I can't even read it. I just have to, if it's so enraging to me that I have to completely step back from that, because I can't stop it, right? I'm not going to stop people. I'm not going to go and shame on you. No one's going to listen. And so it's really just choosing to not be a part of those kinds of communities and not engaging with people that are like that. Doing my show and as responsible as a way as I can to try to educate people about these investigations. And
I think that's really a part of it. I think that, there's certainly lots of irresponsible people who are throwing out rumors or accusations. I think there's this whole other group of people that really, and this is part of the reason why I like your show, benefit from knowing. And I think you gave a great example when you were talking about, like, what does the BAU do when they come to a scene? And you were listing all these things, like figuring out the sequence of events, and this is how we do it. I think there are plenty of people who benefit from knowing the idea that chances are in the first stages of a crime, you can't get a good idea of what behaviors existed. You can't get a great idea of what behaviors existed. And that you should wait, as hard as it is, until more information is on the table. And to some extent, on the outside, we're not going to get that until, charges are filed and indictments are unsealed and evidence is presented. So, I think for looking out, I always find great comfort when I'm watching a true crime show and there's like an expert on there and they say the words, I have no idea. We don't have enough information. That's like music to my ears. If you want to get me to watch you, like admit what we don't know.
Yeah.
And I just think there are a lot of people who don't know that they may view profiling as like this magic. You land on the day of the crime scene and you magically know.
They either consider it magic or they consider it completely useless.
Right.
And because they don't understand it. I mean, there are people that will say, well, what good was that? And it is useful. You never know. Like, you don't know if, your offender characteristics could be used in an interview strategy at some point down the line. You don't know if you've done a linkage analysis, if that will be used in investigative genetic genealogy someday, like Golden State Killer. It's not useless. It does not solve the cases. We don't pretend to know everything. We can't. And therefore, even the investigators, they have access to all the information. They still have questions. So all these people that I don't have any problems. I understand these cases are, extremely interesting. I have an extreme interest in this topic as well. I understand discussion about it. But, jumping to conclusions about who did it, especially so early on when police haven't even released any information, it's just so irresponsible. And the other thing I really find troubling is when people are judging other people's responses to trauma. It's they didn't act how I would think. That also makes me angry because none of us know, like, even from situation to situation. But if you've been through a traumatic event, you may have an idea. Okay, this will be my response. But we just don't know. None of us could know unless we were in a house where 4 of our friends were slaughtered.
Right.
How do we know? And I think that, and I think that's what's one of the things that I've really curtailed social media, because I wasn't really on social media much when I was in the FBI. But then when I started the show, I got more involved in some social media to promote the show. And, because of what I saw in some cases and how victims to this day, or the survivors, are still people questioning their behavior or what they said, I can't,
when they made the call or other things like that. And I completely agree with you, by the way. Like, be very careful about judging somebody's traumatic reaction, first of all. And I think it kind of blends with what you're saying about sort of like, you have these people who have been through this enormous trauma that I think it's hard for people to imagine unless it's something similar has happened to you. It's horrible. Your world.
And I doubt it has.
Right. Yeah. Right.
For most people, they weren't in a house where their 4 friends were murdered.
Yeah. And I could expect almost anything in that moment, just having seen people's different trauma reactions. And I wouldn't even pretend to guess how I would react in that situation. I can say certain things about my normal personality, but there's a point when you're hit by trauma where everything is broken. Like literally everything is broken. And I just, to your point about innocent people, there are these people who have already been traumatized by this experience of losing their friends, period. However, whether it was in a car accident or a murder or whatever it is, they've lost these people they cared about. On top of it, those people have been murdered. They've been murdered feet away from them, which, by the way, means that you were in proximity to a murderer who could have also murdered you. It's just compounded and compounded and compounded just by the crime itself. And then we want to throw lightly accusations on top of that. Like, and I think of those people and I just, think about where they are right now in their lives, which we don't know a lot about, but I know that at least one of the survivors' families talked about some of the mental health issues and anxiety that she's had afterwards. And a lot of that is Bryan Kohberger. Wouldn't have happened without Bryan Kohberger. So he's the root cause of it. But I think a lot of that is also us. And I think I hate, and by us, I mean like the broader community, people who cover crime, or no, not cover crime. That's the wrong way to put it. Enthusiasts into true crime. And I hate to be I just hate the idea. I think it's a part where I struggle with true crime because there are parts of the community that I hate the fact that I'm a part of. I don't even know how to describe it.
Well, I know what you're saying. You're thinking, because I contribute at all, am I part of the bigger problem?
Yeah.
I understand that. I think a lot of people in true crime question that.
Yeah.
And, am I contributing to the problem and to the, further traumatization of people who've already been traumatized? Yeah. I mean, I understand why you feel that way. And I can't say I feel any different because I do wonder that myself. I think you and I have texted where I think I've said something like, I don't know, am I contributing to this genre? And then I think to myself, well, there are good shows out there that I think do good jobs. And, I
right around those moments,
struggle.
I get the email from a sister who says, "Thank you for telling my sister's story," or I get
Yeah,
the
I think good
person.
can come
Yeah.
out of it
Mm-hmm.
too. And I think, I have, and as my show has developed and as I've decided what kind of cases I want to comment on or say, I've decided for me and for the work that we do, I don't comment on active investigations, and I don't comment on cases that are going to be going to trial.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of where I drew the line. Yeah. And, there's certain cases too where I feel like, okay, I need to contact the law enforcement agency or the victim's family. And sometimes it's appropriate, sometimes it's not possible. So those are all things you weigh when we're doing a case, and you're just trying to make sure that any case I do responsibly.
Having a kind of ethical framework, essentially, or
Trying.
operational, right? An
Yeah.
operational and
But
ethical
some
framework.
people would think that true crime is just not ethical at all.
Right.
And I think we all have uh, our own views of what's ethical and how we want to do our shows and run our shows. And so that is like, for me, it's just, and I'm not saying it's unethical to cover a case at trial. And I'm not saying it's unethical to cover an active. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying for me to do my job responsibly, I don't cover those types of cases. And I feel like I'm not helping anything at that point,
Yeah, and it's kind of like knowing where your space is, if that makes sense, based on what
Yeah.
you do. What is the appropriate space to do what you do? If you're doing analysis or you're doing breaking news, it's going to be different. But like, are you swimming in a lane where you can do good, responsible work?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And
hard.
I like to think that I am, but it's all about the person who's listening. Because let's say we do a case and our profile doesn't fit what they think, and so they think we're incompetent, we're unethical because we didn't do a good job. I mean, it's really in the ears of the listener
Mm-hmm.
and their perspective. I have to do what I think is the right thing to do and do it the way I want to do it. And I know I cannot make everybody happy, and I may upset some people at
Mm.
times. But I try to make sure that those aren't, you know, further traumatizing people that are like right in the middle of a traumatic situation right there. And I think accusing people of being involved in their roommates' murders is just it's just a horrible thing to do.
Yeah.
And that really, it was really this case that really curtailed my being on social media.
Social media piece of it.
Yeah. I
earned my degree online at Arizona State University. I chose to get my degree at ASU because I knew that I'd get a quality education, they were recognized for excellence, and that I would be prepared for the workforce upon graduating. To be associated with ASU, both as a student and alum, it makes me extremely proud, and having experienced the program, I know now that I'm set up for success. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
try to curate what, I like to see what other shows are doing, and I promote my show, and I like to interact with my listeners. But more than that, I stay off of it because I just don't like what a lot is said about people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely get that.
I try to be nice to everybody. Like I do. I mean, that's like
It ain't always easy.
Yeah. Yeah, I just try to be nice, and some people just aren't nice. I mean, there's so much awful things in the world, and I've seen so many horrible things, and I don't even contribute. Like what was the CEO at the
Brian
Coldplay concert?
Thompson.
Yeah.
The Coldplay concert.
Yeah, I didn't even make jokes about that. I don't want to hurt anybody. Like it's like that kind of stuff. Like I just feel like that's just mean and icky to do that to somebody. So that I stay out of that stuff too. And I mean, obviously, I saw it and I'm like, oh Lord,
Yeah.
And aren't they going to suffer and pay enough?
Well, I think about, right. I mean, it's an example. I think about, it's interesting. So having covered lots of like death and other bad things that have happened to people, it's obvious you like begin to develop empathy for the victims' families and, even empathize with the victims. But I think in my journalism career, equally as difficult would be something like, let's say I'm covering a politician who's in the middle of some kind of like scandal. They've done something wrong and we're like honing in on them, or law enforcement is honing in on them. And then seeing the inside of that as their family blows up and their kids are harmed and all of that other stuff. I think to myself, like, these things have to happen, right? Because you have to follow the laws. You got to cover events that are in the public interest, but there's a lot of suffering already out there in the world, and I don't necessarily want to add to the suffering by whatever I'm doing.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think you make a very good point. I mean, I'm sorry about your friend.
Yeah. Thank you.
I know what you're thinking of. Kindness is never wasted.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I believe that so strongly. And I do believe too, and this is a lot why I don't interact a lot on social media, even when I disagree with people, or, and I'm not mean to people, because you just never know what someone's going through. You don't know about their family members. And you're right. Like there's things that are just going to get reported. If you have somebody who's engaging in corruption, that's going to be reported upon. But, for everyone to continue to, hate on that person. I mean, you are affecting maybe their children and things like that. And it's like, why do I even need to say anything? What good is it going to do if I say something, or I make a joke, or I attack somebody, or I'm mean to somebody? I don't feel right about that.
Yeah. It's not.
I mean, we're getting into a whole other thing other
different
than
topic,
true crime.
right? Yes, well, as we want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like kindness matters.
Yeah,
it matters. You never know. I mean, I had a case. It's not even a case, but it was somebody who had a hard time at work, and was removed, and maybe this should be cut out, but I did something that I was trying to help that person, but not realizing I was. I was just speaking the truth, and I went out of my way to do so. And I years later got a call from the person, and this person was involved in a lawsuit. And she called me and said when she read what I had done, that it kept her from taking her life.
Mhm.
And I didn't know that at all.
You never
So
know.
many years, I had no idea. I knew she was having trouble at work. And I knew she was being blamed for some things maybe she didn't do. But anyway, I got interviewed about it. I told the truth. And it, it probably didn't help me to tell the truth in terms of like, it probably put me on the radar as like, but ultimately, yeah, but I guess the point was I had no idea. Like what I told the truth about was so insignificant. And to me, it was just, I'm telling the truth. You're going to interview me about this person. Here's my experience. And I was truthful about it. That was the bottom line. But then to come to find out everything that this person was going through, I had no idea whatsoever because it wasn't a close friend or anything like that. And that was probably the time in my life where I realized you just never know what someone is going through, and you don't know what kind of impact the decisions you make, the words you use may have on that person. And I found out years later, luckily, the words that what I chose to do in that situation was very significant in a good way for that person. And, that makes me feel great. And God forbid if it is the opposite, where I've done something that hurt somebody or contributed to somebody who was in a lot of pain already.
I had
Never going to do it
a
on
very
purpose.
similar incident at CrimeCon where somebody came up to me and they said, when you talk about the loss of your mother, or you talk about like you're struggling through addiction or what happened to you at the times, and you're still so optimistic about it. And the person said to me, you saved me by just being willing to be vulnerable about it and show me that it's okay to not be okay and things will work out. And I just think to myself, as much as I do worry about like being unkind and that having a negative impact, you never really do know. I mean, I randomly ran into this person at CrimeCon. They were looking for me. They didn't find me. We missed each other several times. And then finally, a podcaster who they had asked for me, put us together. And you're some person I've never met, I've never interacted with. I just throw my voice out there and I just try to be authentic, and that helps you. So you never really do know. It's very funny that we ended up on this sideways segue about kindness, but the tweet that I put up this morning was life vanishes in a blink. How we treat each other is the legacy that outlives us. And I really believe that. I really believe that the best thing that we can leave is warmth and kindness for people.
Yeah. I agree with that. And, I remember, this is how it goes back to my mother, who I give a hard time to my mother a lot, but so many great lessons I learned from her. And she's still with us, and I'm very thankful for that. She's pretty healthy, so hopefully she hang in there, Mom. She's doing good.
Good.
But I remember being little and like elementary school and coming home and telling her a story about how some kid was being made fun of at school. And we laughed at him, thinking that, and I think I was part of it. Like I didn't think I was being mean, but so-and-so fell down, we laughed or something like that. And my mom goes, oh, that makes me so sad that you would do that. Like that's, that person has somebody who loves them. Like it, and oh gosh, I felt the guilt I felt, and just my mom's reaction, like that makes me really sad. that you would laugh. And I've never forgotten that reaction on her part. And I just remembered from then on, I'm just going to be nice to people. And if I don't like somebody, I just won't hang around them, but I'm not going to be mean to people, and I'm not going to make fun of people. I'm certainly not going to be mean to vulnerable people. And that's just what I carried through. And that's just my life. And you never see me be mean to people. Now I'll be stern with people.
Direct. Right.
Direct, but not outwardly mocking somebody that may be in pain, or somebody I don't know, or anything like that, I think. And certainly not going to, especially in the true crime space, ever, add to someone's hurt by, saying that, well, they didn't act right, or they're probably guilty of this, when I have absolutely no information to base that on.
I wanted to ask you about something else. It's something you and I have privately talked about. I remember over the course of sort of life, I remember the first crime case that was something that I didn't cover. I mean, I can think of the ones that I did cover that did this, but something I didn't cover that just hit me. And it was JonBenet Ramsey. I can still remember folding the newspaper in the car. I remember what the car was. It was a green Geostorm. Folding the newspaper and reading the story on page A3 of the New York Times about a little girl being killed in Boulder, and that just hit me. And then the Roden murders, I don't know if you're familiar with that one.
Mm-hmm.
8 family members, all home invasions. I'm picking up on a trend here. Killed in their homes in the middle of the night. And then this case hit me. And what I find is increasingly, certain kinds of cases are hitting me harder and harder. And some of it, I think, is in the beginning, for a lot of the people, I see myself for my family or the kids' ages. But now as the vector gets larger and I have my dad still around, my brother and his kids, my kids who are college age, I think all sorts of cases are hitting me a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something about this case and these 4 people and what they went through that really shifted, I think, for me, and even to your point about the survivors, my views of true crime in general. And I'm really thinking about it here from the perspective of my part in it. And it's interesting. I can't tell whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Does it make me more or less logical? I don't know. Does it make me more or less empathetic? Probably more empathetic. And I was just going to ask whether you feel it feels so different from when I covered things and the emotional distance that I could have from the,
I wonder sometimes if it's our age.
Yeah.
I do wonder that. I feel like maybe I get more emotional now at my age than I did when I was younger. Now I will say even younger things would hit me.
Mm-hmm.
There would be moments at a crime scene and I would have to choke back something that I thought of, and
you mentioned
get right
suicides, right? That old
those
couple.
Were hard.
Yeah.
Well, the
Christmas.
That was where they were murdered, and
they were murdered.
Yeah, they were murdered, and there was their Christmas gifts for their grandchildren were on the guest room bed, all wrapped up, and the little cards were all signed to their grandchildren, and that really hit me. The emotions kind of overwhelmed me for a second, and so you have to kind of gather yourself. So I've always had that sense where I could lose it at any time here. I got to keep myself together. And that as I get older, those times happen a little more frequently. And I just think as you get older, it's such a cliche, but life just really becomes even more precious.
Yeah.
I think, when you're young, I mean, you do reckless things that you don't do when you're older.
Mhm.
Like you just don't have the sense of
Invulnerability.
that you have. And as you get older, you realize, we're all vulnerable, and I think maybe that's part of it. At least for me, maybe
Mhm.
that's part of it. I certainly think the Idaho cases, it was the first time when I was trying to end our first series on Kohberger. And this actually happened a second time. I couldn't get through my ending. I had the group on and I just read what I was going to say to kind of conclude things. I couldn't get through it, and I had to stop and say, you know what, I'm just going to have to record this later separately. And I do think it was because my own children are in college. And so that case really hits me because I see my own kids when I see their pictures. And I think that was part of it. And I also do think, too, my age is a factor.
Factor in it.
Yeah.
And experience. I mean, I think the more time you spend on this planet, the more loss or tragedy you see. And you're touched by it and you see the impact in a different way. I mean, I don't want to change, in that sense, but it's just been such an interesting evolution for me. And I just think it'll mean a different kind of podcast and different kind of conversations as it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. This is Jason Blair, and this is a Silver Linings Handbook podcast bonus episode. We'll see you guys all, hopefully, again really soon.